Hello everyone, my name is Miguel Hernandez and I'm going to be taking you through the fog level that I created in Dreams for PS4. So to give you a quick overview, the fog level that I created was a story about a journalist who was jogging in the woods and was derailed by a thick fog that rolled in and kind of ruined his trail walk. Took him to an unknown area where there's a mysterious cabin, and we have two mysterious people living here. And so, what the journalist must do to escape the fog is to uncover the secrets of the two mysterious people and make it out of the fog alive. And so, the two mysterious people are Sick and Murder, Sisencio Kerned and Murdoch Kerned, who have been living in this cabin since they were children. Their parents were burned in a fire. They were lost in a fire, unfortunately, and they survived off the land and grew up here in this cabin. But they live underground, and so very sketchy stuff. The journalist, after getting pulled away from the trail by the fog, he stops and starts to think, and then that's where the player begins their quest to get out to escape the fog. So our design intent was to have the player uncover the secrets while playing through where they lived, where Murdoch and Sisencio lived, and escape the fog, essentially. So, let's go ahead and show you the level. And this is an intro cut. So really fast, we chose the organ as kind of like the dark symphony music for this level, and we also chose a lot of very unique sounds to go along to amplify the setting. So we have our toads, because in our written story, our two brothers, Sisencio and Murdoch Kerned, love catching toads. So we set toads over here in the setting. We have birds chirping because they are still in the woods. This location is in a trail based off of Kennebec Rail trails off of Maine. And then we've pretty much just replicated the area of a wooden cabin and its surroundings. So we wanted it to be very spooky. In our design, we wanted the player to experience thicker fog while straying away from the main path, as you can see here. You hear a lot of noises, kind of like water. We have fireflies just for amplification of the setting. Alright. Added tons of sound effects for the immersion. We wanted the player to kind of have experienced these weird events, so we have like sound effects play in certain areas. So we created all these other areas so that the player can go and explore and become immersed with the world. And so we also have rewards for the player that explored versus the player that just chose to go dive into the action. Something really big about this level is that the main path is shown by this dark brown color on the ground, and here you could see a split. So we have this split here because it's a beaten path, it's to the outhouse, and it's the first objective for the player. And if they miss that, then they can't beat the level once they go down to the underground area. They are allowed to restart, but the objective is to pick up these newspapers with titles giving the player a very bland explanation of what occurred here and what has occurred throughout time with these brothers. So we kind of just left it ambiguous so that the player can formulate their own story using the titles of the newspapers. So one of the first titles that we chose was Murdoch and Situ occurred missing, so that gives you a hint of two other people are here besides the journalist. And so here we show the player that they can pick stuff up. And they can also attack. But there are certain weapons that are at one-time use. So that interaction right there, if the player were to swing the item, they would lose the item. That was also incorporated into the documentation as a random chance event. So these random things keep occurring, and they're to keep the player off balance. So here we have another one of these newspapers, and we have a total of 4 newspapers that the player has to collect before they leave the fog, before they escape the fog. So here we have the second title, Children Eaten by the Fog, and we have this burned cabin to show that that part of the backstory, right, where the brothers' parents were burned, and then they rebuilt part of it. It's still boarded up, very private and isolated, to show how they live. We have also some smaller details over here, like this little fire showing that there is signs of life still, right? The spoon showing just some form of civil life form living here. And then we have these mushrooms that are part of a side story, which is Sensio Kern's favorite meal, which is mushroom soup. His mother used to make him mushroom soup every year on his birthday before she passed away. So the player is supposed to come in to the cabin, and they see this open hatch leading to the lower area of the map. Very simple. All they have to do is just walk down here, and then we give the player 3 areas to explore. And again, we still show that these main areas are highlighted by this dark path. We kept a lot of these areas dark to amplify the feeling that the player doesn't have a lot of light, and they should get to know the area before they go and explore, right? So they should know how to navigate the area. You can see it's kind of difficult to walk up some of these areas because this was dug out by 2 people, so it's not going to be perfect. And we've highlighted that by making the ground kind of lumpy and there's spots where you have to run over the area, giving the player a bit of a challenge to search for which areas he can walk over and which areas they have to run over. So next we have some skulls depicting our 3 paths, which showing us which ways we can go. We can go left, we can go straight, and we can go right. So let's go ahead and take the first path. Now, taking other paths does change the story a bit, and that's because you can either speed up the process of being in danger, right? Or you can take your time and still face the danger but be more prepared. Had you not used that axe earlier, it would be a different story for the player that didn't use the axe versus the player that did use the axe. Okay, here we have our help, showing that somebody's been down here. Maybe something bad occurred, but we don't say what exactly occurred. We just show that something bad has occurred down here. We chose this area because this is the lab area of Cisencio Kern. He's a very smart, intelligent, analytical person. He does depend on his brother, Murdoch. So Murdoch is kind of like the muscle, and Cisencio's kind of the brains. So he has this lab area, and you have 2 ways to approach this area, right? You can go in directly through the light, or you can sneak around and use this side here, giving the player the optimal way of sneaking around. Right, there are players with the axe that can just run in, and they chose their combative ways versus these stealth players. Either way, you're able to get to this area. There's a pillar there that breaks up the area, but there's a tunnel here that can be entered from the other side as well. So even if you change your mind halfway by coming down here, you can still walk over here. And come in through this gap. But it was meant for the player to see it on their way out to make it easier for them to escape. So here we have our 3rd title. We have Chef and Spouse Lost in Fire. So now you know why the cabin's things upstairs are burnt and thrown around, and the cabin seems like it's still unfinished. And there you have Cisencio working on his lab experiments, and so you want to get out of this area as soon as possible.
Have you seen the suffering as I did?
So we left this area poorly lit, so that the player has to kind of like feel around. Yeah, and then we have Cisencio quickly turning and looking at the player. But we let this area be poorly lit so that the player kind of has to feel around. And again, we're adding that extra layer of gameplay where it's kind of rough and bumpy, and the player has to choose whether to run or walk and feel around the area before they go and do something. So we saw Cisencio turn around. As he turns around, as the cinematic plays, his sense of heightness, I believe it's called, is increased, and he has a greater range to sense the player. He has heightened senses. So before, you were able to get the newspaper and walk behind him safely, but when he has his senses heightened, you cannot walk around, and he will chase you. And if you don't have a weapon, then you kind of have to run. And if you can't get rid of him, then he will eventually get rid of you. So to show you that, we'll go ahead and let him just walk up to the player. He does have a larger range, right? You can see him coming towards us. He just walks up towards us, and if you let him sit here for too long, yeah, so there it is. It took a second. Could be a bug or something, but it does restart you. It does send you back to the beginning of the level. And everything is reset, so you kind of have to restart all over from scratch. So we'll go ahead and go through the opening cinematic, and we'll show you what would happen if you were to keep your axe and use it to combat Cicencio. The same goes for Murdoch. Murdoch does the exact same thing, but Murdoch also patrols the area, and we'll show you that here in just a bit. So here's the run and gun version.
Have you seen the suffering as I did?
So the axe isn't the only weapon available in the map. There's also a machete and a butcher's knife. Okay, there you go. Bam, so we used up our axe, but this time we got rid of him. Now, I will also show you something here. So earlier we said that if the player did not grab the newspaper in the outhouse, they would not be able to beat the level, and here is why. We wanted it so that the player could possibly get it, but I chose to not allow the player to get it because I wanted the player to understand that their decisions do matter. And here's a bit of a hard way to get up some stairs, but here the path is blocked off, and so they can't leave the level no matter how many newspapers they get. If they didn't grab that first newspaper, they can't escape the level, and so they would have to exit the creation and restart the level. So next we'll be showing you the meat room. The meat room is where Murdoch hangs up all his meat, and he usually hangs around there. Goes outside. He's a very good chef. Loves cooking. He usually cooks the meals for the two brothers, for both him and his brother. Go ahead and grab our axe. So the player is allowed to have more than one weapon, but they are not allowed to carry more than one weapon. So they can have them in the same vicinity, but they cannot wield them all at once. We have our first title there. And I did want the player to replay this level to see how many different ways they can beat it, so that kind of, that newspaper being outside kind of just reinforces that. We have 2 newspapers. We'll go ahead and grab our last one, and here's an alternate method that you can do. You can go up here, right? Go into stealth, go through the tunnel, grab the newspaper, and then walk up to him. Oh no! Oh no! Okay, we died. I'm sorry. Well, I mean, it is capable. All you have to do is just ensure to hit him with the axe. So as you can see, you can't miss with the axe. And that time he got us just a bit faster. You cannot move while you wield your weapons, and that the intention of that was so that the 2 brothers can catch up to you. So you have to kind of pick the right time when to attack. So that loud thunk that you hear, that's when the door upstairs closes. There we go. Nice. Okay. We got a 3rd newspaper. We still have our cinematic play. We still want the player to experience the voices.
Have you seen the suffering as I did?
So the difference there is that when he's there, his senses are heightened, and he turns around and looks at the player, versus him not being there, but still this voice trailing, so that the player still receives that that creeped out feeling. Okay, so here's another portion of the map. This is the main sector, but we'll go ahead and show you the meat room before we head over to the main area of the map.
Fresh meat.
That voice that you just heard was Murdoch. And here there's a weapon. If the player hears the voice and immediately runs, they won't see the weapon, but we go ahead and grab the weapon. We're gonna go ahead and walk away. So this is our main area. This is our cave area where the player experiences a little bit of fear. Something just opened up, and that was murder. So Murdoch is going to be able to catch up to the player here, and you're able to pick up a different weapon here too. So you have the machete and you have the butcher's knife. Either one will remain in the scene when you use it, but you do drop it as soon as you use it. So you either have to use it and catch it, or use it and leave it. It drops automatically, so it's kind of something for the player to experiment with and have fun with. I kind of left it as a unique mechanic. I could have kept it in the hand, but I felt it was a nicer feel to swing and then leave that weapon behind and maybe be able to pick up a different weapon behind you if you set it up properly. So all intentional. We have our cave sounds, right? This area is where we have our little mural for the parents. Right, there's a father and a mother. And their heads and skulls are here. Was out of that weird noise to investigate. Yeah, getting around this area isn't easy, and that was part of the challenge for the player. So we're gonna go ahead and show you Murdoch. There he is, walking around. Okay. Alright, so we got rid of him. Our butcher's knife dropped. Go ahead and pick that back up. He's a little bit scarier, bigger guy. Again, he's the muscle of the two. Alright, and then to exit the area, you want to grab the last newspaper and get out of here as soon as possible, so you don't have to combat Murdoch, but it is there, and at times he will patrol to the main area. Okay, so the player can't automatically exit this way. They kind of have to come over here to this door, and then they'll see this little triangle. The triangle will go ahead and initiate the final cutscene, and this will only trigger if you have all 4 newspapers. And that's the end of the level. So we made that final part, that final portion, as kind of like a kind of like a cliffhanger or misguidance rather, for the players. So they have no clue what's going on. Now they're experiencing some different part of the story, and hopefully that left them itching for more. But if you have any more questions about this level, let me know. It is out. It's released on Dreams. It's called Fog by New Gamer 2021. All right. Thank you very much.